It is Tuesday, February 15th, 7 p.m. here in Washington, D.C., and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Nation's Pastime in the nation's capital, WCUA's only baseball-centric talk show. I'm your host, Andrew Snaith, and here with my co-host, James Higgins. Tonight, Robbie Cruz unfortunately could not be with us here, so we will go ahead and progress. The show must go on here on MBNC, and we thank you all so much for joining us. And as usual, we're going to be breaking down the latest in the baseball world, and as usual, it's not really anything, but we do actually have some little pieces of news. A deal, of course, not reached, probably won't be for a while, unfortunately, but still some exciting stuff to talking about. But first, thanks again so much for tuning in. We are live every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on WCUA Radio. And our shows are posted in podcast form after on YouTube, so go ahead, follow us on Instagram at NatPastimeCap. We post highlights there. We post when those shows do go up on YouTube, so you can listen to them post-live show. Again, at NatPastimeCap is our Instagram account. Definitely go ahead, give that a follow right now. And same as last week, if you want to call in and talk about literally anything baseball related, that number is 202-319-5106. We would love to have you on the air. We'd love to talk to you. 202-319-5106. And with that said, James, I think the biggest topic of our discussions tonight is going to be two of the bits of information we got from the Rob Manfred press conference. I believe it was last Thursday.
Yeah, so we have the Universal DH now officially in play for 2022 and assuming beyond, assuming it goes well this year, and a draft lottery, which will be implemented in the 2023 draft, but will start to be used after the results of the 2022 season. The 2022 draft in July will not be affected. But the upcoming drafts for the foreseeable future will be, and I think it's interesting to look at what the NBA and the NHL have done with the draft lottery. Obviously, with the lottery, there comes risks of opening it up to potentially rigging it, wanting a certain player to go to a certain market to rebuild a certain franchise. But it also disincentivizes tanking and just absolutely playing for the worst record to get the, quote, best possible player, the best prospect. There's still a higher chance that you get the first overall pick if you have a worse record, but with the lottery, the worst team is not always going to get the worst player.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's interesting to talk about. I mean, the reason they did this was to go ahead and try to combat this whole tanking aspect that a lot of baseball teams have done, and may I say, to a degree of success as well. Do you think that this actually gets rid of the whole tanking philosophy, or do you think it still becomes a thing?
I think tanking is still going to be... I think it's not going to get rid of the tanking philosophy because in baseball, more so than any other sport, the best player doesn't always go first off the board, and you don't know who the best player is going to be until 5-6 years down the line. Now, you could say the same thing about the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL, but in terms of baseball, the draft is such a crapshoot of talent. The guy who could be the best coming out of high school or college might not pan out or even make it to the majors. I mean, we've seen numerous examples of guys who have been picked in the top 10 over recent years not pan out to either their star-studded, potential coming out of high school or college or even make it to the pros, and I think it's something where that the draft is very delicate and it's a year-by-year thing. I think you look at this past year with Henry Davis, Jack Leiter, Marcelo Meyer, all the guys picked in the top 5, top 10. They look to be surefire things right now, and if you look at the prospect rankings, I mean, 3 of them are in the top 40. That's pretty unheard of for a recent draft class. But you think about how it's like you think about the tanking landscape going forward. No, it's not going to disincentivize tanking because let's say you are the worst team and you end up getting the number 2 or number 3 overall pick, you could still pick the best player because again, it all comes down to signing bonus and will players sign and signability. Like guys will try to price themselves out of certain teams in certain markets because they don't want to play there, and that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. Like, let's take, for example, Jack Leiter. Like, let's say, last year we had a lottery, and Baltimore ended up getting the first pick out of the lottery, and Leiter clearly didn't want to go to Baltimore. He could have priced himself out, and let's say Detroit picked second, and he really wanted to go to Detroit. He could have easily priced himself into Detroit. It's just an example like that. And I think the lottery also brings up an interesting aspect because every now and then you'll get competitive teams that will have a down year and will have, a top pick.
Right.
What if the Red Sox had gotten the top pick in the 2021 draft after one down year and look at where they are now? It's like you think about the Cubs a few years back when they picked Ian Happ. At the end of their rebuild, it was still a down year, but there are going to be instances where teams have one down year, get a stud in the draft, and reload very quickly. I think that's an interesting aspect of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, You mentioned there that in other sports, I think especially in probably basketball, I would say from my knowledge of basketball, when you have number one, you get a game changer like almost instantly. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And with baseball, it's just not the case. I mean,
well, it can be. It's not the instant impact. Like it can be a game changer. Like you look at Bryce Harper, you look at Steven Strasburg. Those guys were game changers. But even those guys, two of the best draft prospects ever, it still took them a year and a half to 2 years to get up to the majors. That's just how hard it is.
Right. It's just because it's such a different sport, baseball is, and I think that's why it's interesting to see this change actually happen. You know, a lot of people have talked about it. I think it's interesting to see that it's finally taking place.
Yeah, and with this going forward, will there now be a salary floor? I know owners don't want that, but this could be a movement towards it. I don't think the owners will agree to it. I think it's something that needs to be put in place. Like, we need a salary floor. We need to incentivize winning. But this draft lottery is going to put, a whole nother level of intrigue on the draft. And another interesting point, now with the draft lottery implemented, and this is something that baseball hasn't done for years, and I wonder what they'll do in the future. Will they allow teams to trade draft picks? I've always thought it would be interesting to allow teams to trade draft picks. Why not? Why not include it in July 31st trade deadline? Add some intrigue to it. Or on draft day, if you're picking fifth and the guy that you want is going to go in the top three, why not give a bad team more picks?
Yeah. Hey, that's a great point. I mean, I don't know if that would that have to be agreed upon in this CBA, I would assume?
I would assume so, but even if you're picking at the back of the draft, I mean, let's say, you're a perennial contender like the Dodgers, but again, we're throwing hypotheticals out, but you really wanted Jack Leiter. Yeah. Imagine if they traded up to the Pirates to get the number one pick. Imagine if they traded an entire draft just to go get Leiter because they knew how much of a game changer he could be. Again, that's an extreme hypothetical that wouldn't have happened, but it's like, you think about how much intrigue the possibility of trading draft picks could add. I think that would be huge, and I think that would add more fun to it and more viewership because nobody cares about the Major League Draft. But if you add this now, right after the College World Series, during All-Star Game weekend, this could add a lot of intrigue to it and a lot more viewership.
Yeah, that was actually one of my other questions was, from a marketing aspect, this seems like it would be a good move. I mean, at least with the lottery, there's a chance that your team, like you said, if it's a good team, has a down year, has some more balls in the spinning thing that picks them out than normal.
Yeah, the ping pong balls,
yeah, exactly. You could get a really good pick. I mean, do you think this brings a little bit more interest to an otherwise, unnoteworthy kind of draft?
Yes. For sure. Because, every year the draft is hit or miss because it's not like in college basketball where you can come out after 1 year. It's like, guys, just like football, you have to wait 3 or 4 years. But, football guys, like the NFL draft, guys are much more widely known, and I think in baseball, that extra year, going back to school an extra year for the maturation process of a player is more important than any other sport, whether it be basketball or football or hockey. So I think the lottery and the potential trading of draft picks could add a lot more intrigue if guys are underwhelming as prospects or if there's just not a lot of fanfare around these names.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, great point indeed. It's going to be interesting to see how that actually develops. I think one of the most interesting points made there by James is definitely trading draft picks. I think that's something that really would change the game, especially at July 31st, like you said, with that trade deadline. If you add draft picks to the whole last-minute crazy deals, it would just make it that much more crazier and that much more exciting.
For sure. No, I think it would add another level of intrigue, and it would incentivize teams to really go for it all even more because they could trade draft picks instead of prospects.
Yeah, without question. Stepping back to that meeting that Rob Manfred had, or more so the press conference where he announced everything, this was before Saturday, and he said that they were going to come back and they were going to have a proposal for the Players Union on Saturday. And almost every article I read from the top baseball guys out there was, this is the defining moment of his career. He was known as the negotiating guy, right? And he has to come back and he has to give them an offer that they will accept and save baseball on Saturday. It is his duty to do so. James, he failed. He didn't do that.
Did we expect anything less?
I don't think I did. I don't know if anyone did.
I don't even know if the owners did.
No.
And this is something where, as bad as Manfred is, and as much damage he's done to the game, right now he is a puppet for the owners.
Yeah. So
it's a collective blame. We all love to bag on Manfred. We all love to give him the blame, and he's deserved a lot of it for everything that he's done. And we're not going to get into that right now because it will upset every baseball fan. But and he has a lot to do with this lockout. Don't get me wrong. But he's also a puppet for the owners right now. Manfred cannot just be the scapegoat because everyone hates him, because this is also on the owners. He works for the owners. They're writing his paychecks. He's making $11 million annually because of these billionaire owners. So it's a balancing act of How much of it is Manfred? How much of it is the owners? And how much of it do they just want to stick it to the players?
And I got to say, how much of is it the players as well? I mean, you want to think about this from one aspect. This is billionaires fighting against millionaires over our money. I mean, at some point, you just got to sit back and be like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to put too much blame on the players when the owners leak everything out to the media and when Major League Baseball wants to cut so much out of minor league baseball and they want to literally take jobs away from future major leaguers or guys that will never make it but will impact the game on other levels. You think about how poorly minor leaguers get paid and the guys that don't make it, and there are a lot of guys who don't make it. What do? They go back and they scout for teams. They go coach JUCO. They go coach college ball. They go coach high school ball. They go coach for travel teams at youth academies. They do whatever they can to grow the love of the game and to bring that passion down to the next generation, to high school players, to college players, to youth players. With all these jobs being eliminated, that takes away so much of that pipeline. So, like, the people that are in power are actively trying to ruin the sport by getting rid of all these minor league jobs, and it's disgusting and it's terrible. Everyone should be just sick to their stomach with what's come out. I don't know if everyone's read it, but
we're talking about the spring training thing.
Yes. Spring training and just the elimination of minor league jobs in general. And
well, that's been going on for the past 2 years, though. I mean,
yes, but now it's like more of an official. That did happen right before 2020. Obviously, with the I think it was the elimination of 40 teams, if I'm not mistaken. Unfortunately, some great baseball minor league markets. It's cutting out a whole generation of not only just players but also fans. But Jeff Passan reported last night. He also reported today that pitchers and catchers were supposed to report. A sad day. But to quote Jeff Passan, the Players Association rejected past offers from Major League Baseball that would agree the league can control the number of domestic minor league playing jobs and plans to formally reject a proposal that would allow MLB to cut from 180 per organization to as few as 150. So Major League Baseball wants to cut 30 from each organization, 30 jobs. That's playing jobs, excuse me. That's terrible.
Well, not only that, I'm sure you saw the other Passan report that the major league owners and MLB in general were fighting that minor leaguers have to attend spring training, but that they don't have to be paid.
Yes, no. That's also terrible. And what I mean by playing jobs is literally just the amount of minor leaguers you can have in your system.
Right.
That's what I mean to clarify that. But yes, now Major League Baseball is paying someone what, $75 million?
Yeah.
To
argue that
minor leaguers should not have to be paid to go to spring training. And one minor leaguer, I don't remember his name, I wish I did, said, I wish I could go to the grocery store with the opportunity to make money, and they could just accept that instead of payment. Like, if these guys aren't getting paid, and they don't get paid much, how are they going to pay bills? How are they going to go to the grocery store? It's simple stuff that they need in life, and Major League Baseball is just treating them like something that's been kicked to the curb, and it's terrible.
I mean, at this point, it's almost comical. I read that the other day, the fact that, like James said, they're paying someone millions and millions of dollars to fight against having to pay minor league baseball players. It's
crazy.
It's comical.
Just use that money to pay minor leaguers and end it. Because they will save money. I promise you they will save money.
I'm sure for them it's a long-term thing.
Minor leaguers aren't asking for much.
No, they're not. They're asking
for much.
They're asking to get by.
They're paying this guy what? They're paying the firm $75 million or whatever. Yeah. So they could probably pay minor leaguers collectively $30 or $40 million.
Yeah.
They could save money. That's it.
Well, like I said, I gotta imagine it's a long-term thing for them. They think they'll save over the long term, but still, it's not even like they're asking to be paid like major leaguers or anything like that. They're asking to get by. You got to remember, a lot of these guys, we've seen people in the major leagues who are like this, are driving Uber Eats in their free time and are substitute teachers, and it's insane. They're trying to pursue a Major League Baseball career, and we talked earlier about this. Not everyone is going to be a Bryce Harper when they're drafted, right? There's going to be guys who really grind away in the minor leagues, and most of them will not make the major leagues. It's just how it is, but be damned if they're not going to try. And it's so sad to see that. I don't even know what the earnings are, but isn't it something around like $30,000 a year or something like that?
It depends on the player. Depends on where they are in the system. It's from as low as $10,000 to as high as
goodness.
50 or 60 grand. And that's if they're lucky. And I mean, obviously there are some guys in the minor leagues who are making 60 grand, but also signed a draft contract worth $6 million, so they don't have to worry about it. But most of these guys didn't. Most of these guys' signing bonuses are $100,000 or less, and then they have to go off of the 10 grand that they make every year. They have to work jobs in the off season. They got to do 2 jobs in the off season potentially. It's just terrible. And they said they would fix the living conditions, but I don't know if they're going to fix the living conditions. They got to fix the wages.
Yeah, I think the wages need to be fixed by far. I mean, like I said, I can't think of a better word than comical at this point for how they are treating these people. And just a quick reminder: you want to call in, talk about minor leaguers, talk about anything related to baseball, please do. 202-319-5106. That is 202-319-5106. And I think that's a good segue into the other big news, probably the biggest news from I guess it was the press conference with Rob Manfred. And that, of course, is that something was agreed upon. Something between the players and the MLB was agreed upon.
Finally.
And that is, and it's a big shocker. I mean, everyone knew this was going to happen, but to hear it officially said from the commissioner really hurt a lot of people, and it really made a lot of people happy. And everyone knows what we're talking about. That's the universal DH. And starting this season, it looks like from now on there will be a designated hitter in both the National and the American League. And, there's a lot to break down with this. We've been talking hypothetically for years, and we've even debated on here before about, hey, is this good? Is this going to happen? Was even a debate at one time. And you know what? It's not a debate about that anymore because it is happening. But we are going to talk about, and I don't know if I use the word debate, but we're going to discuss with different opinions, I would say, on whether or not...
No, we can call it a debate. Well, let's just call it what it is.
We'll call it what it is.
Both the two of us stand on different sides, so it'll be a fun debate.
We do. But let's break it down first. And essentially all you need to know is that there will be a universal DH, that every team, they have 26 men on their roster now, and each National League team, which is now 15 additional teams, are going to be gaining a DH this year. And something I really want to focus on before we get into debating whether this is good or not, because this is something, forget my opinion on it, and in case it's not obvious, I'm not a fan of this. It helps a lot of National League teams, including the Philadelphia Phillies, which is why I'm not, losing my mind over it. But, James, can you think of any other teams that are just exceptionally excited about this news? Because there are some NL teams that are now going, oh my goodness, this is perfect.
The Dodgers,
exactly.
The
what
Padres,
I was thinking. Yep.
The Mets.
Yep.
I think pretty much every contender in the National League, just because they can go out and sign an extra bat without having to worry about where to fit them in on the field. I mean, you think even teams right now that don't have an obvious DH, you look at the Giants, teams that are going to contend. The Giants, the Cardinals, the Brewers who have lacked offense for the last few years, besides Christian Yelich, and Christian Yelich has been, he hasn't been himself the last 2 years. But you think about all these teams that are contenders that can now go sign an extra bat, and either they can sign an extra position player and slot one of their current guys in the DH role, or they can have a revolving DH, whatever it may be. But I think it's huge for everyone.
Yeah, and, someone else who's probably very happy about this is the Nelson Cruz types. I mean, there's now 15 more teams that want your services, and I don't know about you, I don't think Nelson Cruz is planning on retiring.
No, and same with guys like J.D. Martinez when he is free agency in the offseason. Next offseason, Kyle Schwarber, he can be a part-time outfielder, part-time DH for all 30 teams. I mean, you think about how much this is going to extend guys' careers, and we'll get into this later, but you think about somebody like Bryce Harper, and this isn't obviously to bag on Bryce right now, but you think about, his body's not going to hold up for 10 more years as a right fielder for 160 games a year. No. He'll probably play 60 games in right and DH about 90 to 100. So,
and you know what? That's a beautiful thing, because not only with him, which by the way I think is a great example and is one of the main reasons why I'm excited about it a little bit. But think about all the players that now have 15 more teams that are willing to sign them to a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal when they're really old and can only hit home runs. That many more opportunities to get to those milestones, like 500 home runs, 3,000 hits, whatever it may be. They can do that now with even more opportunities. So
for sure, and I think this also goes back to trying to disincentivize tanking and incentivize winning.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point as well. I think, I don't think there was any disagreement between people that this was going to be something both the union and the MLB agreed upon, and I don't think it's a shock that they came out and said, hey, you know what, this is happening. But I think now that it's official, there are, I got to be honest, it seems like there's a lot more people in favor of it and realizing how it is going to help the MLB overall.
Yeah, so let's get into our debate, Andrew.
Yeah, I don't really have a I don't have a whole lot of I'm not going to say facts to back up my point of view.
I think it's more going to be objectional than facts because people will side on that, but we can get spirited about it.
Yeah, it's basically objectional. I mean, I will say this. Both leagues are the same, right? I'm glad that's the case.
Yes, both leagues are uniform now.
If the 1-1 and when there's interleague play, one gets it and one doesn't. That's how I grew up with baseball. That's how baseball's been for 30 years now, 40 years now.
Since '73.
Oh yeah, well I'm talking about since interleague play started.
Oh yeah, since '97.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, So that's what I'm used to, right? But at least everything is uniform now. So let me start with that. But I honestly, I just don't like the DH as a concept, and I never have. You can call me a baseball purist, although that would not be accurate because there's a lot of traditional baseball things that I do not agree with. For example, bat flips are pretty cool. I like those. Those are nice. But putting that jokes aside, right? Like, the whole thing about baseball is that there's 9 men on the field, and each of them has to hit and they have to field. And you can sit here and be like, what are you, 80 years old? And that's fine, right? But I like that. I like that you have to do both. There's not a cheap out that someone just does it for you if you're a pitcher. Like, I get it. The stereotype is, and it's accurate as well, that pitchers can't hit. And that's fair because they spend their time developing their hitting, right? Or not developing their hitting, and, they're pitchers. But at the same time, there's something beautiful about the moments where you see, Joe Blanton step up in the World Series and hit a 2-run home run. There's moments like when you see, I'm trying to think of the other ones that have happened. Jake Arrieta a couple years ago did it. You had Brandon Woodruff hit a home run off Clayton Kershaw, future Hall of Famer, probably the greatest pitcher of our generation. And it's just moments like that make it so much more special, where the stereotype of they can't be a good hitter, they're not a good hitter, and then they do something like that. You know what? I'll give up my best one before I turn it over to you, James. The reliever, he was actually a starting pitcher who was called up by the Padres this year and hit a grand slam in his first at-bat off of Max Scherzer.
Yeah, I think it was Daniel.
I forget his last name.
Camarillo.
Yeah, something. I think that's right. But I was rewatching that the other day because someone posted that on my Twitter feed, and the comment was, "We will never get something like this again." And it hit me. It's true. That was such a cool moment. Please go ahead, look that up if you haven't. I mean, just one of the coolest baseball moments.
Daniel Camarena.
There you go. Yep. San Diego Padres starting pitcher. Called up from AAA. His whole family's there. He makes a start against Max Scherzer, one of the other greatest pitchers of our generation. What does he do? Steps up with the bases loaded, hits a grand slam. So, case in point here before I turn it over, I'm a fan of all 9 players on the field having to field and hit.
I am very much in favor of the DH. I've always been in favor of the DH, and I am so happy that we have a universal DH. First, you think about guys like Edgar Martinez and David Ortiz, the 2 DHs in the Hall of Fame, but other great DHs that have been in the game for a while. Nelson Cruz, J.D. Martinez. Harold Baines he's not a full-time DH. I'm talking about guys, but you think about, the DHs we have in the game right now, Nelson Cruz, J.D. Martinez, Yordan Alvarez, I know he tailed off a lot at the end of his career, but Albert Pujols. There are so many guys who are just great at hitting, and what wins you baseball games? Hitting. So if there's a guy who can just mash but isn't great in the field, it's a perfect spot for him. Because guess what? Pitchers can't hit. Since they play travel ball in high school, they are literally a PO, a pitcher only. They go to tournaments. When they pitch, they just pitch. They don't hit. So it's specialized from a young age. What are they getting paid? Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, they're getting paid millions and millions of dollars to pitch. They're not getting paid to hit. Nobody wants to go up there and see them just stand, look, strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. And nobody, if they're trying to hit, wants to see them take a hard swing, foul ball off, and strain their oblique. Jacob deGrom's injury troubles this year came from hitting.
But he loves hitting. James, he disagrees with you.
Yes, Jacob deGrom loves hitting, and yes, he had a .423 average when he got hurt. But the greatest season ever, potentially by a pitcher since Pedro Martinez in '99, was ruined because he was hitting. If Jacob deGrom didn't have to hit, he probably would have stayed healthy the entire year and would have moonwalked to the Cy Young and one of the greatest and probably the greatest pitching season of the 21st century. Second, you go back to pitchers getting hurt. Chien-Ming Wang for the Yankees was in the middle of a remarkable season in '07, got hurt running the bases in Houston, was never the same. Guys get hurt all the time. Clay Buchholz, I remember he strained a hamstring running the bases in San Francisco when he was with the Red Sox. There are countless examples of pitchers getting hurt, whether it's swinging, whether it's running the bases, whatever it may be, getting hit by a pitch on their throwing arm. Jacob deGrom throws righty and hits lefty, so guess what? His throwing arm's exposed. I know he wears a huge guard on it, but what if it clocks him on the wrist and he breaks his wrist and he's out 6 to 8 weeks?
James, I just got to say, though, you can't keep bringing up deGrom because he disagrees with you, man. He wants to hit. He's opposed to this.
Well, Jake proved my point right this year because he got hurt.
He might have.
And he didn't pitch after the middle of June. So I know Jake loves to hit. And we love watching him hit.
We do.
We did. But it ruined the greatest season, potentially, of the 21st century by a pitcher. Next, you wouldn't have guys like Edgar Martinez and David Ortiz in the history of the game. Like David Ortiz, Edgar Martinez, 2 of the best hitters to ever walk the planet. We would not have had them for as long as we did in baseball if there was no DH. David Ortiz wasn't going to play first base until he was 40. I don't even know where Edgar Martinez would play in the field. Probably first base or third base. He wouldn't have played until he was, 40, 39, however old he was when he retired. It elongates guys' career. Think about your boy Ryan Howard after his Achilles injury. If he had the DH there, he could have just slid into DH in 2012. The recovery would have been much smoother, and I'm sure he would have aged much more gracefully than he did after that injury. This is going to elongate guys' careers and will allow teams to sign these guys even when they're at the end because they can DH. You can have a part-time DH. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can have a guy as a part-time DH, and it's great because he doesn't have to do anything more strenuous than he should. And yes, I know the examples of pitchers hitting home runs. Bartolo Colon, Joe Blanton in the World Series. Everybody's favorite moment is Big Sexy on May 7th, 2016, going bridge off James Shields in San Diego. That's an awesome moment. That's a once-in-a-lifetime moment. So is the Joe Blanton home run in the World Series. It's really cool when pitchers do it, but the majority of the time, they look at 3 strikes, they foul off 2 bunt attempts and feebly swing at strike 3, they ground out to the third baseman, they do whatever. Max Scherzer didn't get a hit this year.
But James, those once-in-a-lifetime moments, that's what makes baseball so cool and so special. We're not going to get them anymore.
Yeah, but do you really want important games, especially in the World Series, coming down to this? What if you're out of bench options?
That's baseball. You got to manage better.
No. If you're out of bench options because you used all your pinch hitters earlier,
yeah.
No, that's not
the game, man.
No.
Well, I'm sorry, it's not the game anymore.
You're correct, and it shouldn't be. Like that 18-inning game with the Dodgers and the Red Sox, Game 3 of the 18 World Series. We just saw pitchers going up. Everyone was going up, swinging and missing. But especially when the pitchers came up, because everyone was out of position players. I mean, there was no chance. You just walked the 8-hitter to get to the pitcher.
But man, those once-in-a-lifetime moments, like that, to me, it's things like that, the improbable, that make baseball so cool and so special. Things like Bartolo Colon hitting a home run. I mean, that guy had no business making contact with the baseball, but he hit a home run. And you know what? It took him, hundreds and hundreds of at-bats to do that. But because he was able to hit and got that chance, he did eventually do it.
Yeah, but not everyone's going to play till they're, 82.
No, of course not.
But not
still.
Everyone's going to play till they're 47. Not everyone's going to be given that chance. And most pitchers don't like hitting. They just want to focus on pitching. It breaks the concentration. Imagine, we've had examples of this before.
Yeah.
Pitchers going up to the plate in no-hitters or perfect games, and that'll break their rhythm. Next inning, they go up, they give up a hit, or they give up a walk.
Through this whole debate, I am thinking what we're saying is incorrect. There will still be a pitcher who hits in 2022.
Yeah, one. Okay, he's also a full-time position player and DH.
Well, no, my question, though, is...
Ohtani.
Well, this isn't a question, but it's actually a fair point, because the days that he pitches, they will put him in as the pitcher spot, and he'll bat second or third or whatever,
Correct.
right? And so technically speaking, we might still see some pitchers hit from time to time.
No,
it's not
the
completely
Angels
gone.
will just pinch hit.
Right, but I'm saying if we want to be technical about it, it could happen where, like you said, they run out of bench bats.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not officially done, but my thing is, right, you know what, let me back up for a second, right?
But
you have watched...
hold
Oh,
on.
go ahead.
There are numerous examples, though, in the World Series where AL teams have been, at a disadvantage because of it, and late in games, the game comes down to a reliever. Relievers in the NL never hit. Relievers in the AL really never hit. Relievers in the AL late in games, because they want to keep them in an extra inning instead of just having them get one out and come out, they have to hit.
That's cool. I like
Prime
that.
example, Brandon Workman in the 2013 World Series where John Farrell screwed that up.
Yeah. I also think that there might be a little bit of bias behind this, considering we both grew up watching different leagues.
I grew up watching the greatest clutch hitter in Red Sox history and the greatest DH ever. So of course there's bias behind it. It's also right.
It's also right. Those are the final words here on the DH debate here. On the DH being universal,
Look,
it is right. There's no. Let me ask you this: is there any circumstance where you think that it is incorrect?
No.
I didn't think so.
Offense wins games. Offense brings viewership. Offense does everything that teams and fans want to see. You look at guys like David Ortiz, and it's I think elongating guys' careers is a huge thing. Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, Fernando Tatis. I'll say him at this point in his career, because of how injury prone he is. But this isn't a knock. This isn't a knock on any of those guys. But if you have supreme offensive talents, it's going to be great to elongate their career by a couple years. Even if you have a revolving door at DH, let's say you have in 5 years with the Phillies, Bryce and Real Muto, and insert other ex-superstar. 2 days a week you DH. Those 2 days a week will add up over the course of the season. Let's say Bryce DHs every Monday and Friday. That would be huge.
I'm not sitting here and arguing against the merits of it because I understand them. I preface this saying, as a Phillies fan, I am overjoyed. Not only is this going to extend his career, this is going to get JT off his feet for a little bit. He doesn't even have to play the field now. I used to stick him at first on his off day so we could get his bat still, but you don't have to do that anymore.
Too bad Posey and Zimmerman retired a year early.
Yeah. I mean, so I understand the merits. It's just from a purely baseball metric. It goes against baseball as a whole.
So are you going to miss most the strategy of, oh, my pitcher is pitching. Let's just take Zach Wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Wheeler is dealing. Through 6 innings, he's given up 1 earned run. He struck out 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1-1 game. There's men on first and third, 1 out, and you have the decision to either let Wheeler hit, and he'll probably hit into a double play, or you bring in a guy off the bench to pinch hit. Is that the strategy you're going to miss?
I'm going to miss that, but also that's a bad example because Zach Wheeler can hit.
Well, guess what? You're not going to miss that because you're going to be happy that you don't have to. It's not even a consideration to take Wheeler out of the game.
That's not baseball, though, man. I don't like that. What's outside of the lefty righty?
That is one of the reasons why I am happiest because now you don't have to take pitchers who are pitching well out of games because the offensive situation presents.
Well, I don't understand how that affects you, though. You don't even watch National League Baseball.
I watch a lot of baseball.
That's fair, but as a Red Sox fan here, since we're being objective,
yeah, but I'm a baseball fan too.
That's fair, right? But like. I don't agree. I do not agree. That's an integral part of. Let me ask you this: like, what is the manager doing at this point besides calling people in from the bullpen? I mean, not that they make that much of a difference.
No, but you're talking about with pinch hitting.
Yeah, there's
still strategies with matchups. There's still strategies with just late game situations. It doesn't even have to be a righty lefty thing. Like you could be saving a veteran bat off the bench for the right situation, even if it's a right on right or left on left. Like it's the bullpen stuff. It's managing the clubhouse. It's the lineup. It's dealing with injuries. I mean, being a major league manager is hard. And anyone who tries to say it's easy.
I didn't say it was easy. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot going on behind the scene that I understand. But, yeah, you know what? Overall, I didn't think we were going to be changing any minds here in the studio tonight on the topic of the universal DH. But I'm willing to now put the nail in the coffin on this debate. It does not need to be discussed anymore here on MBNC because the reality of the situation is it is now universal.
What do you think about no more double switches?
You see, that's another thing. I mean, there were managers that swore by that and did it every single game.
But at the end of the day, like, you still have to pinch hit guys.
To be fair, though, double switches were relatively being phased out anyway. There weren't a whole lot of people that did
because
them.
You wouldn't want to take one of your better offensive players out of the game just so the pitcher could hit 4 spots later and then eventually have to burn another bench guy.
Strategy.
No, now you get to see the best players all the time. Because, look, I'm glad the pitchers don't have to get taken out because when they're being paid $25, $30 million a year, they can stay in to pitch 1 extra inning and win your team a ball game. And when you win the division by 1 game, you'll look back and say, May 3rd. That's when it mattered most.
James, let me tell you, as someone who wants more than anything to win a division and literally just get swept in the postseason, I understand how this helps me and how 1 game could be the difference. I'm still against the DH being universal.
I can't wait until a Phillies DH does something big and we can prove him wrong. And I don't mean a full-time DH. Wrong. It can be just a Philly that night who is the DH for the night.
You don't have to prove me wrong. I mean, I don't think this is right or wrong. This is just my opinion. I understand what good it's going to do. I also understand the bad that I personally think it does. But
fair enough.
Overall, I mean, like I said, I'm going to put a nail in the coffin there because guess what? The DH is a thing, and I will now go on for the rest of my life and accept the fact that the designated hitter is in the National League. I can't believe I just said that sentence, but you know what? I did, and it is official. So why don't we go into... Before we do that, actually, quick reminder, 202-319-5106 if you want to call in, talk about the DH, talk about anything baseball-related throughout history. Literally, if it's baseball-related, we want to talk to you about it. 202-319-5106. So what we want to go into now here, a little bit past the halfway point of the show, is we did have some news of an official retirement today, and we thought this might be the case, but it is now official. He sat out the 2020 season. He did play in 2021, served pretty much a bench role, but a beloved guy, the first Washington National drafted ever. That is, of course, Ryan Zimmerman, and got to give a shout-out to him who announced his retirement today and had one heck of a career.
Ryan Zimmerman is Mr. National. Number 11 will be retired by the franchise. He will be in the Nationals Ring of Honor for sure. He is the best National to ever, wear a Nationals uniform.
So far? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, so far.
Absolutely.
Yes. In the relatively young history of the franchise, over the course of his career, he amassed 284 home runs. He had over 1,800 hits, 1,846. Had over 1,000 RBIs, 1,061. Had a career 816 OPS and had a career 40.1 WAR. He was a two-time All-Star. He only won one Gold Glove, but he made a lot of highlight reel plays at third base early in his career. He could have definitely won more than one Gold Glove for sure. He was a two-time Silver Slugger Award winner and, of course, a World Series champion in 2019 with the Washington Nationals. He had a big moment in that series, hitting a home run off Garrett Cole in Game 1, and I think there was no one more fitting than Zimmerman to do it. And I think...
Correct me if I'm wrong, not to interrupt you. That was the first Nationals World Series home run, correct?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was the Nationals we've arrived moment by their biggest veteran who had been with them through all the highs and lows. And I think that's the big thing with Zimmerman. They selected him out of the University of Virginia. He's from Virginia Beach, so a somewhat local kid. Played his entire career with the Nationals. Debuted in 2006 when they were at RFK. Was there when they lost 100 games in back-to-back seasons, which allowed them to draft Strasburg and Harper. He was there for all the division-winning seasons when they came up short in the playoffs, and he was there for them to finally win the World Series. And I think that's what's most gratifying, is that he was able to win a World Series with the team that drafted him. He played with his career for an entire team. He played his entire career with one team, I believe, 18 years, 17 years, which is, phenomenal. That's so rare in this day and age, but he was loyal to a fault. The Nationals paid him. He got his contract. I think it was an 8-year, $100 million contract he signed before the 2012 season. He was a catalyst on all these Nationals teams. Even when he was at the end of his career, he was such a strong leader. Like, he was beloved not only by the Nationals, but by, I think, everyone in baseball. Everyone had that respect factor for him of, this is a guy who puts his head down, he does it the right way, he hustles, he doesn't show up his teammates, he doesn't show up opponents. He shows up to work every day, ready to do whatever it takes to win. He switched positions halfway through his career because of arm issues. He went from third base. He was a third baseman from 2006 to 2014, and then going into 2015, he switched to first base to help prolong his career. And you'd have to think the universal DH might have prolonged it even more had it been around then. But Zimmerman's a tremendous example of just what it means to be a baseball player. I'm very glad I got to witness his whole career in DC. It was all I've been to countless Nationals games. He's been the one constant with the Nationals franchise. It was awesome. He was a great mentor and leader for guys like Strasburg, Harper, Soto, Rendon. All the young guys who have come up through the National system, and he's been there through thick and thin. He deserves every moment of it. I think everyone respects him. The standing ovation he got from everyone in his last game in Game 162 this year was awesome. The Red Sox came out of the dugout, gave him a standing ovation. Obviously, all of Nats Park, and the Nationals gave him a standing ovation. He deserves to go out in his own terms, and I'm glad he went out while he could still, at least was somewhat of a semblance of himself. He wasn't completely washed up.
Yeah, when I think of Ryan Zimmerman, my favorite part of his career has to be 2017. This is a guy who in 2015 and 16 he was not good, and he was hitting around 218, 249 in 2015, 218 in 2016, and missed a lot of games from injury, and a lot of people were like, he's done. He's absolutely done. This guy's too old. The injuries are going to get to him. And what does he do in 2017? The guy hits 303, 358 on base percentage, slugs almost 600, hits over 30 home runs, and is an all-star, and out of nowhere just revives himself.
And I think he was an all-star starter.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was.
He was tremendous in 17.
In that first half of that season, I just remember watching him play and thinking, this guy shouldn't be doing this. He's done. I thought he was cooked.
And people have since wanted to talk about the juice balls, but trust me, that people got to stop referring to everything as, it was the juice balls, because that was more, I think, 18 and 19 than 17. But let's be real, Ryan Zimmerman, I think that's a tremendous. I think that's the best example of resolve and not wanting to go out on your own terms and not wanting it to end on a bad note. And I think you go back to the 17 season, the go-ahead home run against the Cubs in Game 2 of the NLDS. I mean, that's his Mr. National moment right there. It's either that or the home run off Cole in the World Series.
Yeah, without question. He's had some fantastic moments with the Nationals.
Nats Park is the house that Zim built. I mean, the first game there, he had a walk-off home run against the Braves.
He sure did.
Nationally televised game.
It's simply incredible. And, as someone who's watching the 2019 World Series, obviously not rooting for the Nationals, it was really cool not only to see him, be the first National to hit a home run in the World Series, but just for him to get the ring with the team that he spent so long with. You've seen so many examples of guys who spent all these years with a team that's just absolutely horrible. There's ups and downs, and then at the end of their career, they signed somewhere else to finally get their ring, right? But he didn't have to do that. And I think that's really special, not only to Nationals fans, but to him. I think he truly loves the organization, and his impact, I think, is felt not only in the current national team, but of almost all of them since he debuted.
Definitely, yeah.
So hats off to Ryan Zimmerman for a fantastic career. I mean, not much more can be said there. Just simply remarkable, and I'd have to agree with James. His number will soon be retired by the Washington Nationals, I would say.
Yeah, number will be retired. He'll be in the Ring of Honor, the Ring of Fame, whatever the Nats one is, and he can be the first and the National to have their number retired, and which there's no more honor that's fitting for another guy than him.
Yeah, without question. And, quick reminder before we go ahead and move on to the next part here, if you want to call in anything baseball related, we'd love to have you on the show. 202-319-5106 is that number, 202-319-5106.
One more thing about Zimmerman, he was Mr.
Absolutely.
Walk-Off.
He
had
really
so
was.
many walk-off.
He was a very
walk-off
clutch
home runs, especially early in his career.
Yeah, very, very clutch hitter. I can remember multiple ones against the Phillies, and honestly, just that guy.
He had a 4th of July one against the Marlins in 06. He had 2 against the Yankees in his career. One in 06 off Chin-Ming Wong, who was going for a complete game, and then one in 2015 off Andrew Miller, went right off the foul pole. I want to say he had one recently. But he had a lot at the beginning of his career. Obviously, the one in the first game at Nats Park. He had so many moments at RFK, but before Nats Park, I mean, it was he really was Mr. Walk-Off for a while. That's why I was surprised he only made 2 All-Star teams.
Yeah, without question. And we do have a caller here. We're going to go ahead and take in the studio and see what they got to say. Hello, caller. You're on the air. Who are we talking to?
Hey, this is Travis. And,
What's up, Travis?
I'm a huge Nationals fan, and I just wanted to say thank you to Ryan Zimmerman, my favorite player growing up. Face of the franchise. Can't say enough about that guy and everything he's done. And I guess to contribute to the show, my question was going to be, do you think there's any way we can see Ryan Zimmerman be like a late ballot Hall of Fame guy?
Yeah, you know what? Before we answer that, I got to ask you, Travis, what is your favorite Ryan Zimmerman moment? I'm sure he means a whole lot to you.
Or if you got a couple, throw both in.
Yeah, I have a few I can definitely give. So, obviously, the easy answer would be like 8 years old. I started watching baseball when I was 5, which was 2005, the Nationals' first year in D.C. And then 08, Nationals Park opened up, and the walk-off on opening night. That was my favorite, most memorable moment, too. And then all the big playoff moments, he had a home run against the Cubs, 16. He had that diving play he made against the Cardinals to save Anibal Sanchez no-hitter.
Yep.
Oh, that's
19,
a good one.
Yeah.
LCS game 1. There was no reason Ryan Zimmerman, with his age and athletic ability, should have made a play like that, but he was able to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then being at the parade in 2019 and his emotional speech, that was just so awesome to witness in person. I'd never seen so many grown men crying than when he was giving that speech.
Yeah, no one better to represent baseball in D.C. than Ryan Zimmerman. And I think to answer your question about being a late ballot Hall of Famer, I'm sure he'll get some down the ballot votes. But, I just don't think over the longevity of his career overall, he was at the top of the sport, at his position for long enough to warrant staying on the ballot, more than a year or two. I mean, he'll get a few votes. I don't know if he'll get that 5% in year 1 to stay on, but it'll be interesting to just track guys like that to see a few years down the line how voters remember them.
Yeah, like Dustin Pedroia is the number 1 in that category. He retired last year, and it'd be interesting to see how long he can stick around and if he can linger on the ballot.
Yeah,
I think he's in that same sort of.
For sure, and I think David Wright also. You put him in that category as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He's another great one. And another face of the franchise.
For sure.
Yes, without question. Well, Travis, thank you so much for calling in, paying tribute, and sharing that moment. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your night.
You got it. You do the same.
Thank you very much. Yeah, truly a stand-up guy. And just by taking that call there from Travis, you can see what he really meant to the city and to the fans. And he's someone that will go down in history with the franchise. And you think about it, a relatively new franchise still. And we're going to be talking about him 50, 60 years from now when the Nationals look back at some of their best players.
Definitely.
So, last little quarter of the show here, there's two things I wanted to talk to you about, James, and we did get the approval of the universal DH, we got the approval of the draft lottery, but there are still two main issues that I'm concerned about will either continue or be added or amended or whatever the word is you want to use. One of them, and this is something that Rob Manfred mentioned might be going away in a press conference last year, I believe it was in the fall, and that's the three-batter rule. We haven't really heard a whole lot of movement on that front, and I think it's pretty safe to say that no one is a fan of it, including the managers. So do we think that that stays around in 2022?
I don't think anyone's a fan of it. I personally am not a fan of it, but I do think it's going to stay because I think that, it's that is one thing where I don't know how much did Manfred address that compared to the 7-inning doubleheaders and the no runner on second base, because he specifically addressed
those
those
are gone,
two.
right?
That
he
those were
specifically
gone.
said those are
He
gone.
did not come out and say that the three-batter rule was going to be gone. No. Those other two rules might not be changed because who knows what's going to happen with the new CBA and all that. This was in a press conference last fall where he said that doubleheaders would go back to being 9 innings and that there would be no runner on second to start extra innings. But he didn't specifically address the three-batter rule. Not a lot of fans like the three-batter rule, the two of us included. I don't think managers like it. Pitchers definitely don't like it because it shortens, it elongates games or bad situations, whatever it may be. I hope it goes away, but I don't think it's going to.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that elongated games because the purpose of this rule was Rob Manfred's master plan was, hey, let's change the pace of play. Let's make it quicker, and let's make it quicker so that you have to face at least 3 batters, and managers can't be changing righty, lefty, righty. You can't do that anymore, right? And it's funny because I don't know the exact statistics, and you can look this up because I did read it the other day, and that's the fact that games have gotten longer since this was initiated. They've literally gotten longer, and I don't know what else to say other than the main reason that you've instituted this rule, it's failing to meet that reason. And the other thing is just, it's not only about the strategy, right? It's not only about killing the jobs that the lefty specialists had that we've talked about on the show here before. Let's go back to April of this year. It's a safety issue. We cannot forget instances like the Genesis Cabrera incident where he stands up there and throws 3 balls and near the heads of 3 different batters. One of them, of course, Bryce Harper, who got hit in the face and was not the same for 2 to 3 weeks after that. Of course, still ended up winning the MVP, but still, that was just a situation where the pitcher was completely out of hand and there was literally nothing the manager could have done. So when it comes to safety, I think that's as much of a concern as it is with the whole strategic part. And like James said, I don't think there's a single manager that likes this either. No. I remember Joe Girardi specifically said this might be the dumbest thing we've ever done after there was an instance where he couldn't take a pitcher who was struggling out after 2 batters. So I'm with James. I hope that it's amended. I hope that it's taken away because it's utterly asinine. I don't have anything else to say. That needs to go away. Now, that, I think, has an okay chance of being eliminated is the word I'll go with, not amended. Something I think is happening no matter what, because technically benefits all parties, is expanded playoffs. I think this is something we are 100% seeing. Would you agree?
Yeah, but I don't think it. I don't think it benefits all parties, but I do think it's something.
You don't think it benefits players as much as it does?
No, not at all.
Well, obviously not as much, but I still think they would probably be in favor of it, would they not?
It waters down competition.
Yeah, that's
Point
fair,
blank.
and I've heard that argument, but at the same time, I mean, it's going to create a lot more opportunity to get to that promised land. Yeah,
sure, but I'll take the NFL's edition of the 7th seed the past 2 years to kind of go off this. So the NFL, they had a 12-team playoff format, 6 in each conference for a while, and after the 2020 season, they implemented a 7 seed, which meant they eliminated the bye week for the 2 seed, which meant, in theory, oh, cool, it's going to be an extra game for fans, more viewership, more gate revenue, whatever it may be. In theory, it's just a game for the 2 seed to get beat up. And I'll go through all those games real quick. Bills-Colts in 2020 was the only competitively close 2-7 game. The the Bills, who were the 2 seed, they won 27-24, and it took a last-second Hail Mary from they had to fend off a last-second Hail Mary from the Colts to win that game. That was the only close game. Saints-Bears in 2020 wasn't remotely competitive. Saints cakewalked them. 2021, Bucs-Eagles. Bucs rolled Philly. And then in the AFC, it was Chiefs-Steelers on a Sunday night. It was a massacre. The Chiefs rolled Pittsburgh. 2 things with that. One, it made the road harder to win a Super Bowl because you only have one bye with the 1 seed. Secondly, it's just an opportunity. The 7 seed is 0-4 in these games. Secondly, it's like, sure, you can say, it creates an opportunity for more upsets. Yeah, until I see it, sure, whatever. Football's a hard game, and a worse team gets in that probably doesn't deserve it. The biggest thing with that in football, it opens up the opportunity for a really, really good team. A, it punishes them for winning 12 or 13 games by saying, hey, instead of getting a bye to rest, you're going to have to play an extra game. B, it opens up the opportunity for that team to get beat up and hurt. Perfect examples with the Bucs this year. And I don't know how many of you guys are avid football fans, but their right tackle, Tristan Wirfs, their best offensive lineman, he sprained his ankle in the second quarter. It got rolled up. They were up 17-0 at this point. They won the game 31-15. The game wasn't close from the first snap. He got hurt in that game. Was inactive next week against the Rams. The Rams had a field day against Brady and the Bucs, and they won. Now, they were up 27-3. They blew the lead. The Bucs could have won that game, but my point is, one of the Bucs' most valuable players got hurt, and it potentially cost them a chance to go win another Super Bowl.
So using that as an example, that's why you think it wouldn't be beneficial?
I don't think it would be beneficial because it would water down the competition. Worse teams would get in. It would open up the possibility for pitchers to get worn down and for guys to potentially get hurt. And you can use that same principle. I know football's a 1-game scenario compared to baseball where you're probably going to have a 3-game series, but what better way is there to start the postseason than a 1-game do-or-die Game 7 type feel in the wild card game, where both those teams are really, really good? Let's just take this year, for example, and I know the American League almost came down to a game 163 with 4 good teams, but imagine, and with this expanded playoffs, they want the top seeds to pick what team they're playing. And because of that scenario, this year MLB had the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, the Mariners, and the Yankees do that in advance in case any of these scenarios happen, so everyone know where to travel in advance. It got leaked that the Yankees picked to play the Red Sox in that scenario, and they knew that going into the wild card game that, hey, if we were in a tiebreaker scenario, they would have picked to play us because they didn't view us as a worthy opponent. What did the Red Sox do? They trounced them. They beat them 6-2. So it creates, cause for controversy because if the if the team with the best record ends up picking the team with the worst record, well, that could just be viewed as, oh, they're picking us because they think we're the worst, when in reality, it's just how it should be, like playing the team with the worst record. And let's say they pick the team that doesn't have the worst record. Now it's going to be, oh, they think we're worse, even though record-wise we're better.
Yeah, all great points. And for the record, I do agree with you. My biggest thing with why I have a problem with it is watering down the 162-game season.
That's my biggest problem, too. I was just using those other examples. But let's just take the American League field this year with 7 teams. So you would have had the Rays as the division winner as the 1 seed. You would have had the Astros as the division winner as the 2 seed. And you would have had the White Sox as the division winner as the 3 seed. The 4 wildcard teams, per se, would have been the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Mariners. And the top seed gets a bye, if I'm not mistaken. So Tampa Bay would have gotten a bye. So now you have Houston. Houston can pick from the field whoever they want to play. Whoever they pick to play is going to be viewed as slighted. Whereas if you just went with a seeding system, they would automatically have played, I think, Seattle. So Seattle's going to view that as a slight, even though under a normal seeding system, it would have been, just the process. Additionally, we know, based off the seat, like this is a different example because they're division rivals, but we know based off 162 games and the season series record, Houston's a much better team than Seattle. They didn't need to have to go prove that in a 3-game series. What if for some reason they got upset? Well, guess what? Oh, upsets are cool until Tampa would have trounced Seattle in the next round, probably. Upsets are cool until the next round. It's a complete blowout and not even a contest because the lesser teams can't keep up with the better teams. And I know in baseball, yes, it can be different. Teams can get hot. The Red Sox went from the wild card game to Game 6 in the ALCS. Yes, sure. But that's not going to happen every year.
Right. Well, I think we can at least agree that, it's going to change in some way. So let me ask you this. We have keeping it as it is now with the 2 wild card teams in each league, reverting it back to what it was, or expanding. If you had a choice, what do you think you would do?
Keep it as it is right now. It's the best.
So you wouldn't even go back. You like the wild card game?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the best playoff system in all of sports. There are 30 teams in both the NBA and the NHL. 16 make it. That's more than half. In the NFL, you have 32 teams. You have 14 make it. It used to be 12. Now it's 14, which is still pretty even, but it's still that 7 teams still kind of waters things down.
Yeah.
Right now in baseball, you have 30 teams. Only 10 make it, and 2 of them are eliminated after 1 game. So really, it's only the best 8. You know who the best are, and the best will win. Because let's say the team with the worst record ends up winning in baseball, you can't say, well, they were the worst. Well, you had to go out there and really, really prove it and show that you were the best.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. When it was first initiated, I got to be honest, I was not a huge fan of the wildcard game, but I've really grown to appreciate it because no matter what the teams are, no matter what it is, it's that do-or-die atmosphere. It's that Game 7 atmosphere immediately as the playoffs start, and it really just always hooks me.
It's a great way to captivate viewership. This expanding the playoffs is all a money grab. They don't need to do this. It waters down the competition. It's not good. A lot of players don't like it. I know there have been a lot of players. Justin Turner was one of the guys who spoke out about it on Twitter because going into 2020, that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
That was a league's proposal. It's not something that's good for the game. It waters down the competition. It waters down the 162 games that teams fight for. It puts teams in an awkward position of having to pick. It's not something that's desirable. And I think, if you give the 1 seed too much time off, they're going to lose all their momentum. So what are you going to do? Oh, you won 100 games over a 162-game season? Yeah, let's go have 6 days off before you play and then come out rusty and you get swept.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Something like that has happened multiple times, actually, when it comes to teams that sweep the ALCS or NLCS and then sit around while the other opponent plays 7 games. They win, they get hot, and then they come in and...
Even look at the wildcard game. The team that wins the wildcard game has beaten the 1 seed who they've played, more not I don't want to say more often than not, but a lot. You look at the Red Sox this year. They beat the 100-win Rays pretty not pretty handily, but they gave them everything they had and then some. You look at the Nationals in 19, they won the World Series from the wildcard game. You look at different teams throughout the course of the evolution of the wildcard. The Giants in 2014.
Yeah.
This is all stuff that the Cubs in 2015 went to the LCS. You could go on and on about how the team from the wildcard game goes on to win, and that's going to be so much harder in this 7-team format to have good runs like that. Because just because you make the wildcard game doesn't mean you're a lesser team. Mm-hmm. You could play in a tough division. Hence the AL East this year.
Yeah. So bottom line, actually, let's go with the AL East for a second. That's 3 teams that legitimately could have won a division if they were in the NL East.
And 4 including Toronto, because the AL East had 4 90-win teams this year.
That's a good point, actually. Did the Braves win 92 this year? Because I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken...
No, the Braves won 88.
They won 88, so all 4 of those teams would have won the NL East.
Yeah.
That's insane. And I think that it makes the wildcard game even more interesting when it comes to that. So bottom line, if James is the commissioner, we're keeping it as it is.
Yeah, for sure. It's the best playoff system in all of sports. There's no need to add to it. You make enough money anyway. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Hey, evidently they don't. They're fighting over it.
Well, if you want to make more money, you start the season on time. You don't worry about expanding the playoffs.
Very true, very true. And I think that's very well said, and we're gonna have to monitor that. I don't know which way that will go. I would have to lean towards it being expanded, just because it seems like that's the direction it's going.
Same here, unfortunately.
It's probably something the players would compromise on, in order to get something else that they want. So, unfortunately, I think that might be the case.
Yeah.
I can live with that. Let me close with this. I can live with that as long as we don't see any more 7-inning games and runners on second.
Sure, and one more thing before we sign off. Congratulations to Clayton Kershaw's high school teammate, Matthew Stafford, on winning the Super Bowl.
That's right.
I don't think a lot of people know that Stafford was a pretty good high school baseball player. Played shortstop, before he focused full-time on football. Went to Georgia on a full-time scholarship. Was the number 1 pick of the 2009 draft with the Lions. Spent 12 years there before being traded to the Rams last offseason, and now he's a Super Bowl champion. But a pretty good baseball player, according to both himself and Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah, how about that? Congratulations to him, of course, and... yeah, I'd say both.
And Kershaw
both
was
solid.
At the game to cheer him on. Pretty cool.
That's fantastic. I'm assuming they're still friends.
Yeah. And it was in LA too. So.
Yeah, so it makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's going to be about all we have tonight here on Nation's Pastime and the Nation's Capital. Thank you all so much for tuning in. A reminder, of course, follow us on Instagram at NatPastimeCap. You can get all of our updates there, all of our highlights. It's a great place to be, at NatPastimeCap. Go ahead, follow us. And this show, of course, will be posted in podcast form tomorrow. So if you're listening live and you tuned in late, go ahead and view it on our YouTube. You can find the link to it at our Instagram, once again, at NatPastimeCap. And you can catch us live again next week on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on WCUA Radio. And I've been your host, Andrew Snaith, here for my co-host, James Higgins. Have a fantastic rest of your night.